Today we're talking about the things that either make your cost-seg lucid life-changing or useless for real estate professional status. Because cost-seg can create huge paper losses, but if you can't actually use them, they just sit on your return as what decoration, right? But now, in the course, you have seen how cost segregation take a building and drag a big chunk of depreciation into year one. Under the current Big Beautiful Tax Bill rule, it's not crazy to see six-figure losses on a single property on paper. But here's the catch. If those losses are passive and you don't have enough passive income, you don't touch your W-2, they don't touch your business profit, they don't touch your other non-passive income, they just stack up as suspended losses. So the real question for the lesson is simple. What does it actually take to turn those cost-seg-driven rental losses into something that can offset your other income? That's where real estate professional status or rep comes in. In this lesson, I'm going to walk you through what rep actually mean in plain English and the three big pillars. Hour, more than anything else, and materially participation. Why rep can turn your rental losses from passive into non-passive. A classic example with one spouse have a high W-2 and the other spouse is a rep, and the cost-seg become a weapon. The real-world risk of casually checking rep box with weak documentation. And if you are tax pro, how to package rep plus cost-seg as a planning engagement your client will actually pay for. If you listen, keep asking yourself, is it me? Is it my spouse? Is it my client this year or next year? All right, let's start with what real estate professional status really is at the high level. We're going to stay out of the code section soon. I just want you to have a mental checklist you can actually use. So rep have three big pillars. Number one, the hour test. Number two, more time in real estate than anything else. Number three, material participation in the rentals you care about. If one of those legs is shaky, the whole rep strategy wobbles. So let's break them down. First, the outer test. To qualify as a real estate professional for the year, you generally need at least 750 hours of personal services in real property trades or businesses. And those hours have to be active, where you are materially participating. Real property trades or business is a broad bucket. It can include development, construction, acquisition, conversion, rental management, leasing, brokerage. And if you are a landlord who is hands-on with your rentals, the hour may count. If you are an agent or broker actively working with clients, the hours may count too. The keyword here is services. It has to be actual work, not just passively owning a building. And just as important, it has to be real documentable work. Not like I feel like I work a lot this year. That doesn't fly with the IRS, right? We're going to come back to documentation because that's where people either win or get burned. The second pillar, more time than any other work. This is the one people forget or they hand wave away. To be rep, you must spend more time in your estate activities than in any other trade or business you perform during the year. So say if you have a full-time W-2 job that takes 2,000 hours a year on paper, it's very hard to argue that you spend more time in real estate unless the facts actually support that. This is why rep often showed up as a two-spouse household. One spouse has the big W-2 or business income, the other spouse is all in on real estate. They manage the rentals. They handle tenants and vendors. Maybe they are an agent or they run a small property management business. In that setup, it's much more realistic for that real estate spouse to hit both the 752 hours mark and the more time than anything else requirements. So as you are watching, think about your household as a unit. It's not always about the person with the high income become rep. Often it's the other spouse who's best positioned to wear the rep hat where the high income spouse wage get offset. Third pillar, material participation. This is where a lot of people get tripped up. Even if you qualify as a real estate professional, time, your rental do not automatically become non-passive. You also have the material participate in the rental activities you want treated as non-passive. Material participation basically means you are not just a passive investor. You are involved on a regular, continuous, and substantial basis. In normal human language, that usually looks like you are the one making the management decision. That's what you do anyway, right? You approve tenants, you set rents, you coordinate repairs and oversee major work. You are involved throughout the year, not just signing paper and closing and checking in once a year. For many landlords, you will also see a group election. Instead of testing material participation property by property, you elect to group all your long-term rental together as one activity. That can be powerful if you are very active overall, but light on hours at any single property. So let me pause and connect the dots. The big picture, right? So rep is hour plus more time in real estate than anything else. Non-passive rental requires rep plus material participation in the rentals. If both pieces are there, now we can talk about using cost seg losses again on the income. If they are not, your big paper plot loss might just go on the suspended loss shelf. Now, why the rep actually matter, right? Under the passive activity rule, rental start life as passive by default. Passive losses usually can only offset passive income. You don't have passive income, those losses get suspended and carried forward. So imagine you do a big cost seg study, you generate a huge paper loss, and your rental are still passive. On paper, you got this massive deduction. In reality, nothing happened to your W-2, your business profit, or your consolidated income. You don't feel it in your tax bill this year. Real estate professional status plus material participation changes how the law sees the rentals. Once you qualify as a real estate professional and you materially participate, your rental activities can be treated as non-passive. And when your rental are non-passive, now your rental losses can be potentially offset other non-passive income. High W-2 wages, profit from an S Corp or Schedule C, consulting income. That is why rep is such a big deal in cost seg conversations. Cost seg is the engine that creates big early paper losses. Rep is the bridge that lets those losses cross over and hit your non-passive income. Without the bridge, the engine just reverses in neutral. With the bridge, the same cost seg study can radically change your actual tax result in the year you care about. So let's make this real with a classic example. I want you to picture a household with two spouses. Spouse A have a high income W-2 job, say around $300K a year. Spouse B is all in on real estate. Spouse B manages 3 long-term rentals. They are the primary contact for tenants and vendors. They are dealing with turnovers, lease renewals, repairs, and they are tracking everything. They spend well over 750 hours on real estate, and they do not have another job that even come close. So real estate clearly wins more than anything else tax. They also work with a tax advisor who track hours during the year, not after the fact. Document what they are doing and for which properties. Elect to group their long-term rentals as one activity so they can test material participation across the group. Now this year, they buy a new rental for $800K of depreciable basis after carving out land, so you minus the land already. They order a cost seg study under the current big beautiful bill, tax bill rule. The study come back and break that $800K into buckets. Rough number. So maybe $280K as 5-year personal property. Another $70K as 15-year land improvements. The rest sit in the 27.5-year building structure. Because the 5 and 15-year buckets are under 20 years, they qualify for 100% bonus depreciation in this environment. So in year 1, they get roughly 350K of bonus depreciation on the short life bucket, plus regular depreciation on the rest, the long, slow bucket, right? After rent, interest, taxes, operating expense, they're looking at around 320 of net rental loss on paper. Now, here's the fork in the road. If spouse B does not qualify real estate professional with material participation, that 320K loss is passive. It can only offset their passive income. If they don't have much passive income this year, most of that 320K just become a substandard loss. It's not gone, but it's got locked up. They will maybe use it over time as they build more passive income or when they sell a property. On the other hand, if spouse B does qualify for a estate professional and materially participates in the group rental activity, then those rentals are non-passive. Now that same 320K losses can offset spouse A W-2 income. It's a high margin tax rate that might translate into six-figure real estate tax saving this year. That could be cash they can use for another down payment or pay down debt, or they can be reserved, they can fund the next payment, or they just, may help them breathe a little bit easier, right? Same property, same cost seg study, same total depreciation over 27.5 years. The only difference is how the law classifies the activity. Passive, the loss wait. Non-passive, under REP, the loss can go to work immediately. That's the power we are talking about in this lesson. But whenever that's much power, there's also risk. So we need to talk about how people get in trouble with REP. Because REP is such a powerful planning tool, it's also a prime audit area. Here are some of the common ways things go sideways, fast, unrealistic hour. If you are claiming 750 plus hours in real estate and more than any other work, but you also have a demanding full-time job on paper, that's going to invite questions. The IRS will look at your W-2, your job title, and ask, where did all the extra hours come from? Second, weak or reconstructed log. If your time log is something you whipped up in the weekend, 2 years after the fact, and it reads like a perfect even spreadsheet of round number, so that's a red flag. Auditors see time log all the time. They know what real messy in the moment records look like. Third, confusion about what hour actually count. Time spent just reading about real estate or occasionally glance at financial from 30,000 feet doesn't carry the same weight as hands-on management and decision making, right? Hour has to be tied to the real property trades or businesses, and they have to match your rep story. 4, missing material participation in the rental themselves. Sometimes people qualify a rep because they run a development business or a brokerage. That can work, but if they then try to free up big losses from rental where they barely participate, that's a problem. Rep started alone doesn't flip every rental loss to non-passive. You still need material participation in the actual rental activity that generating the loss. And finally, missing grouping election where they make sense. If you own multiple rental, you are very involved overall, but you never make a grouping election. An auditor might look at each rental property separately. Suddenly, your hours get chopped up and you might not materially participate in any single one. So if you are seriously consider a rep for this year, you want to treat documentation like part of the strategy, not an afterthought. Be honest about your hour and other workload, and work with a tax pro who understands both the opportunity and the boundaries. Rep is not a casual checkbox. It's a strategy that have to match your real life. Now, quick word to the tax pro that watching this. Prep plus cost seg is one of the most valuable planning combinations you can offer, but only if you frame it as planning, not as a throw-in. Think of it as its own engagement. Start with an initial assessment meeting. You review the client real estate activities, jobs, and businesses. You roughly map their hours and roles. You decide whether rep is realistic this year or maybe next year or not at all. Then you build a documentation plan. You help them choose a tracking method for hours that they will actually use. You clarify what counts and what doesn't. You decide together whether grouping election makes sense for their rentals. Next, you bring in cost seg feasibility. You can use the planning templates from earlier module to estimate potential reduction and tax savings. If REP look realistic and the cost benefit looks big, you help them think through timing. When to close, when to place the property in service, when to run the study so the loss lands in the year that matter the most. Then you implement and file. You only take REP when the facts and documentation support it. You integrate the cost result into the return. And you document your reasoning in your work paper so future you can sleep at night. You are not selling a magic REP switch. You are guiding clients to a responsible question. Can we truthfully meet this standard? If yes, how do we capture the benefit in a way that we are comfortably depending later? That's a very different conversation, and client will pay for that. Let's wrap it up and connect it to where we're going next in the course. In this lesson, you saw that cost segregation can generate big paper losses. But those losses only move the needle for you if you can actually use them, right? Real estate professional status is the key for some investor to reclassify rental as non-passive. To do that, you need at least 750 hours and real property trades for businesses, more time in the activity than in anything else you do, and material participation in the rental where you want to use the losses. When that is true, cost losses from rental can potentially offset high W2 income or business profit in the same year. When it's not, the losses often just wait around as suspended losses. So what's the difference if you just take the long, slow bucket, right? Just dump everything into the 27.5 year and do it the slow way. What's the difference? Unless you want to build up for this year and then next year you claim it. You also saw why casually claiming REP with unrealistic hour or weak logic is risky and why this is such a common exam area. And if you are a tax pro, you saw how to treat REP plus cost seg as a structured planning engagement, not a yes or no checkbox and tax step. Your action step coming out of the lesson is simple. If you are an investor, look at your current year and your next year. Could you or your spouse realistically meet the REP standard in a way that you are comfortable documenting? If you are a tax pro, think of one client who might be a genius REP candidate. Stretch out their REP plus cost seg would change their 1 and 3 year tax picture. In the next lesson, we're going to look at the short-term rental rules, sometimes called the STR loophole. That's the path for investors who don't qualify as real estate professional but can still make cost seg losses more usable by materially participating in short-term rentals. So whether you end up on the REP path or the STR part, you are going to connect cost segregation to actual usable tax saving, not just big number on a depreciation schedule.